Reserve. The root of all our evil, it begins with the Federal Reserve. Hey, yeah, well, let's go back in time when everybody was so proud of America.
I'm Tommy Salmons. This is year 0. Today, I have Legalman and Patrick MacFarlane on the show. I had Legalman and Patrick MacFarlane come on, let's see if I can talk, in order to discuss the justice system and what we see going on around us in the justice system and how the justice system is unfairly utilized against the American people and how you will never get justice. It's more of an injustice system than a justice system. So I wanted to have 2 attorneys on to have this discussion and get into detail on things that they've seen and how bad it gets. But first, RyanBunting.com. For all of your graphic design needs, go to RyanBunting.com. Ryan Bunting is a great libertarian, a great anarcho-capitalist, and really good at happy endings. Ryan Bunting is the only graphic designer that will give you a hand job after completing his task. So go to RyanBunting.com and ask for that free hand job. That's RyanBunting.com/hand job. LibertarianInstitute.org is where you can find this podcast and others like Liberty Weekly, Conflicts of Interest, The Scott Horton Show, Keith Knight, Don't Tread on Anyone. And there's some great writers there. Kim Robinson, Jim Bovard, and Sheldon Richman. I always forget all the writers. There's so many great writers. I know Patrick MacFarlane writes weekly for the Institute, and I should have an article coming out fairly soon. I'm still working through some minor details on it. But yeah, so go to libertarianinstitute.org and check out all the great shit we got going on over there. That's where you want to go, the libertarianinstitute.org. And thank you, Tom Burton, for the music. Enjoy the show. Okay, I'm here. 2 great attorneys. Legal Man, how are you doing, sir?
Doing great.
And Mr. Patrick MacFarlane from Liberty Weekly.
Hey, glad to be joining you both.
Yeah, I'm glad to have you back on, brother. So I've had both y'all on a couple of times, never together, so this is going to be interesting. Let's start off kind of with some of the topical stuff that's going on. I want to talk about the Sussman trial. I don't know how much either of you have looked in it. I know, Legal Man, you tweeted about it the other day, so maybe I'm sure you have some opinions on what's going on with what happened with Sussman and him getting off. My view is they were never going to convict a Clintonite. That's kind of the way I looked at it.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'll speak to it since you kind of directed it to me. I did that came up, and I ended up doing a show. It's in my Patreon. I think I'm going to probably put it out Sunday coming up. That kind of touched on it. Levin, I almost never listened to his show, but he was talking about it some and railing about it and pissed about jury nullification, which is what he claimed it was. And it probably was ultimately kind of a really low end version of jury nullification. But, my feeling about that is one, I mean, what's the crime really? I still don't quite understand if I assume every single thing they say is true, that the guy is a lawyer, he worked for them, he knew it was a load of crap, he passed this thing along to the FBI, he knew that it was probably a load of crap when he passed it along. Okay. So?
Well,
so what? I don't, to me, I don't get it.
The breakdown I heard.
The FBI knew from the beginning that the report was crap. The CIA had full knowledge of the fact that the report was crap. And the FBI knew it. So to act like this individual private citizen who's been singled out to be taken to trial was somehow responsible for this multi-year charade that went on with the DOJ and the FBI lying endlessly. having all sorts of other. It's just bullshit to me. To me, it's just. I'm glad the guy got off, and I hate Hillary. But what is this crap? Trying to single out a private citizen while these FBI agents, the DOJ, all these other people are still walking around free. No, I don't think so. I'm not down with that. That was kind of my feeling about it. I don't have any problem with people lying to the FBI.
Right.
Fucking FBI lies to us. I don't understand what was so we're not allowed to lie to them. They can lie to us all day. Well, what do you mean? He handed you a report. Isn't your job to go figure out if that report's worth anything? Not to run off and do the stupid crap they did. I just think the way it's being presented to people as this highly politicized red versus blue load of crap, it just intentionally misses the point that really matters. And that is that the FBI is unconstitutional. The Department of Justice is a complete joke. They were completely fraudulent. They're all in on it. They knew from day one this report was crap. And the idea that you're going to force this lawyer, who he is, he's a slimy kind of lib lawyer, high-priced dude, and you're going to single him out for some kind of criminal charge. I'm not down with that. So, and like I said, you're never going to find anyone who thinks Hillary Clinton's a bigger piece of crap than me. But I'm sorry, that's just not a crime. I just don't. They wrote it down. They're saying it's a crime because they write it down. Oh, lying to the passing on some bullshit made up thing. I don't get it. To me, it's just, I don't know. To me, the way it's been used is to gin up interest in voting. The idea that we have to vote and get control, and somehow we're going to clean out the FBI and the DOJ, and we're going to get to it, and we're going to go get Hillary and all these people. I'm sorry, I'm not buying it. That's my feeling about it. Probably not a popular opinion, but
No, I don't disagree with you. One of the more interesting takes I've heard, and it was that they brought forward the wrong charges. that bringing forward that he lied to the FBI was the wrong charges because the FBI was in on it, and it's like the FBI has never been held accountable for anything. From the beginning of time, they've never been held accountable for anything.
It's unconstitutional. The federal government has zero authority to have an armed police force. That's completely idiotic. Police force didn't even exist when the country was formed. It's totally impossible that the Constitution includes the authority to have something that didn't even exist back then, like a armed group of goons running around keeping secret records on us. I don't think so. That's not okay. They want to try to do that. They need to go get themselves a constitutional amendment. Good luck. Otherwise, no, thank you. And anytime the FBI and the DOJ are involved in these kinds of things, this is a highly politicized event. Okay. And so is it unfair that people on Hillary's side, half the damn country of idiots who voted for her? Well, of course, an actual jury that represents the people is never going to convict her and any of her cronies for trying to do her stuff. They wanted her to be president. Of course, they're not going to convict her. I've got no problem with that. I have no problem with that whatsoever. This is why the government's authority needs to be massively limited, because these things, they don't have any real personal consequence when the government's the one stuck having to go out there and so-called prosecute people. And the idea that they brought the wrong charges, can you believe they're actually even have the gall to bring up a lame-ass defense like that after all the years of Trust Durham and Sessions and all this stupid crap? And how much time and trouble and expense does the guy have to go to try to get a conviction for something so damn simple? It's ridiculous. It's utter incompetence. And if people understood the fantastic disparity between the amount of time and expense that an average person gets in their trial and the kind of respect they get from the judge, which is totally zero, And then the kind of stuff that these people get with their kid gloves and this unbelievable legal team and this crap goes on. And how much time and money was spent prosecuting this guy? I mean, if you added it all, how many millions and millions and millions and millions and millions of dollars was spent going after a private citizen for walking into the FBI and going and talking to chief counsel and handing him a document that everybody at the time knew was a complete joke, and that everybody knew that the guy worked for the Hillary campaign. How much time has been spent chasing this preposterous rabbit hole? It's just a waste of time that people are distracted with things like this. You know, it's amazing to me. It just pisses me off when I think about those constitutional conservatives. That's why I did the show on it, because all Levin did was badmouth jury nullification the whole time. And jury nullification is the thing that's going to save us.
I can't stand Levin. It's like
I know, but he's a constitutional scholar.
I can't
Worked
listen
in the Reagan
to that
administration.
Yeah, I cannot listen to that guy.
It doesn't make his opinion any more valid. I don't care if you're a first-year law student. I don't care if you never went to law school. Anybody has an opinion that's valid if it's valid. It has nothing to do with your credentials.
Yeah. Patrick, what do you did you look at this case any? And
I mean, I haven't looked at it any, but I mean, there's so many red flag issues that come up with it. You know, I spent some time studying FBI entrapment during law school, and I did a pretty good episode with Kyle Anzalone about it in like 2018 or something like that. And it just, but yeah, I mean, everything that Legal Man hit on in terms of like the police can lie to you as much as they want, but you lie to them and the book gets thrown at you.
They intentionally try to trick you into lying to them. Yeah. They have a whole system of trying to get information you don't know they have, and then asking you about questions, these kind of tricky ass questions. The same thing they did to Flynn, the same kind of bogus thing. You compare how that poor guy was treated and abused for so-called lying. It wasn't even a lie. That wasn't even a lie. They sent that guy to prison, and now you have this other thing. It just shows how fantastically politicized the whole thing is. And yet these constitutional conservative jokers in media, they want to act as though this is some kind of holy event going on down there because there's a government employee wearing a black robe. It's just an insult to my intelligence and to anybody who's ever been in any kind of civil or criminal litigation. It's just an insult to intelligence, whether you are a victim and dragged into it, or whether you're a lawyer or have ever been a witness. You see what a joke the whole thing is. And the idea that they're trying to seek justice, and that the justice in this case was to send this private lawyer to prison for having a conversation where he passed off a document that was a transparent joke from day one. Yeah. Give me a break.
Well, it struck me too, and I don't know if this is like if from an attorney's point of view, if y'all even like if this registered with y'all, because it seemed like a big deal to me. So I don't know, maybe y'all could like set me straight on this, but it struck me that it was so close to the statute of limitations when they finally like did bring forward any charges. So if anything did even come out of it, it would have been too late to bring charges against anybody else.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, they play games like that a lot for a variety of reasons. That may or may not have been a substantive reason. I mean, nothing about what Durham's doing is legitimate. I mean, it's a complete fraud, and nothing's going to come of it. And so, you know, there's a lot of times you watch the statute and they file them, you know, closer to the end. But if you have a good case, there's no reason to wait unless they were gathering, you know, information. And yeah, in all likelihood, he did probably take his time filing it just so that he would have that built in to the fact that the whole thing's a charade, so that if something did come out of it, oh, too bad, now we're barred by the statute. Oh, what a shame, man, now that I wasted all that time, waited so long, and now we're screwed. I mean, just kind of, you know, please don't throw me in the briar patch kind of thing. You can never know if it's incompetent, if it's planned, if it's there's just no way to ever know. But it doesn't indicate anything about the strength or weakness of the case that it was filed late. It doesn't really indicate anything.
Right. And that's not what I was. Yeah, that's not what I was getting at. I was getting at they intentionally did it so that if there was information that were to come out during testimony or something like that, they would have been like, well, it's too late. I can't go after these other people because the statute of limitations ran out, and you see that they didn't go after like obvious co-conspirators like Christopher Wray and these guys from the FBI. And so you knew it was all a joke. You knew it was all a charade. It was just, smoke and mirrors.
How many times has Hillary Clinton blatantly lied to Congress under oath?
Well, I was going to say that.
But she's not charged. I mean, why are we jacking around with these other absurd charges instead of going and getting these people who've just clearly committed perjury on recorded TV shows? Just go bring them up on charges already. Why are we screwing around with this just kind of minor players in the act? Except that it's just a show to try to make it appear that something's happening when, in fact, nothing's happening. And it's all designed to get people to vote and to think their vote matters and to watch the vote and to donate money and to stay on this plantation instead of telling them the truth. That's all of these things they ultimately all come back to that.
Well, and it's hilarious to hear, to see conservatives get all excited, like Hillary Clinton's going down, Biden's going down. And I'm like, well, the saddest part to me is you had to wait until they were damn near 80 years old and time was taking them down already. Like, right. Why couldn't you get them earlier? Like, they're such corrupt individuals and they're obvious criminals, just blatantly in your face being criminal. Like, you had to wait until there were no more use to the political establishment before they were taken down, which I find just insanely hilarious.
Right.
What is, just from y'all's perspective, what is the main problem with the modern day judicial system? What are we dealing with? Because it seems all kinds of bass backwards. I see what's going on with like the January 6th defendants. I see what happens with BLM rioters. It's just so politicized, and it's like, what happened?
I think incentives are a big problem, but I also think that the system trying to do too much is a big problem, because you get litigation that just goes on and on and on for years. But another part of it is the expediency with which they try to dispose of cases through plea deals. Because it's so much easier just to plead to something and get it taken care of, as opposed to dragging your life on and on for months or years at a time trying to deal with something minor. And then trials, in my experience, I mean, criminal trials they're kind of glossed over to the point where you don't have the time or resources to really put together a really great defense that maybe if you're a civil attorney working on $1 million accident case, the quality of lawyering, because the resources that are available is much higher in the civil realm like that.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree that there's definitely a big distinction. I think it depends on what you're talking about. There's so many problems. To me, the most fundamental problem is that there is a total and complete lack of understanding of what a jury trial is supposed to be. It's why I've been doing that entire series about it, because it's not just about trials. It's about governance. That's what they're about. They're about governance, the people's voice being heard in thousands and thousands of individual cases all over the place, so we can get an idea of what people are behind. That's a huge, huge issue, but there's so many more. To me, the very, very fundamental fact that there's no personal liability for anybody in the system operating the courts, and especially on the criminal side, there's one person in that courtroom that's risking anything. One person. That is utterly idiotic and asinine, and no system can ever work where there's only one person who's risking anything. That can never work. And until you have actual personal liability for the kinds of behavior they engage in now with complete and total immunity, and even if they do somehow massively step out of line, and somehow get tagged as a cop for just making crap up. We all see the videos all the time of them abusing people, making up charges. Now, okay, maybe those people win, maybe they don't. But the cop doesn't have to pay. He needs to pay out of his own damn pocket. It's not this, oh, the taxpayers pay. How about the judge? How about the judge when they make all these terrible rulings? So, oh, you got to go and get it on appeal. Well, the appeal's expensive as hell, and it's no guarantee. And so when you have these different made up standards that, oh, there's broad discretion. Why? Why is there a presumption in favor of the government? The government should never get any presumption in a criminal trial of any sort, in any possible way. Not an evidentiary presumption, not any kind of burden, nothing. They should have the strictest presumptions against them at all time. And when government employees come in to testify, the juries need to be instructed. These people have a monetary interest in the outcome. This is their job. They work for the same people who are being charged. It's ridiculous. And if we had more things like that, there was more understanding of the fundamental problems of the system, then we could address the kinds of things that Patrick's already talked about, which is that the system is way too complicated. I mean, just trying to get through a civil case, give me a break. If someone comes in with a perfectly legitimate claim, comes into my office, a perfectly legitimate claim, but a complicated claim to prove with a small amount of damages, there's absolutely nothing you can do for them. Nothing at all. If someone comes in, you say, well, look, you add 4 or 5 zeros to that claim. Yeah, I can do that. But otherwise, no. And all the businesses and people, they're all aware of that. It's all used all the time against people because they know, no different than insurance companies. They know they have a calculation. What do? They deny, defend. That's what they do. They deny all the time, completely deny any liability. Is there any actual punishment to them? No, you have these ridiculous so-called laws on the books for bad faith. It's almost impossible to prove bad faith, and yet they engage in it all the time. That's their business practice. And so you can go through lists and lists and lists of problems. All of them disappear if people understood when they were in panel as a juror that your job here is to listen to whatever facts you think are relevant and do what you think is justice in this case, not all this hand-tied, well, the precedent, the law, and the standard, I can't hear this, and the evidence, that. That's all crap. See, those are all just artificial constructs to make it expensive so that the people who have money can just not pay their bills. And when I was a young lawyer, I first got out of law school, I went to work at a huge firm with hundreds and hundreds of lawyers. And the very first thing I figured out right away was that these rich people we represent, they just don't pay their bills. They just say, screw you on these bills that you and I, people like, we just pay, and we just pay them, but they don't. No different than these large corporations. It's just a cost of doing business. They just have these lawyers on staff, and good luck to you. And you will get ground down. And how long will it take to even get to trial? And then the kind of trial you get will be crap. And then the judge sucks and he's against you. And he kicks all the people, all the jury you need, and he doesn't let your evidence in. And then you find out it could be appealed. You have to appeal. You get the evidence brought back in. You go back to the same day. It's just impossibly complicated. And that's not justice. That's not justice. And if the courts aren't there to do justice, then they need to be shut down, because the only reason they're there is to do justice. If we're going to go into a kangaroo system, we might as well just have vigilantes running around. That's the complaint against them, that it's not just. You don't get a just, fair hearing now in the courts. And so trying to sort out the problems it's so many problems to try to address, so many problems. And the barrier to entry with regards to cost is a huge one. It really is a huge one. But the simple reality is, if jurors were understanding what their actual job was, you really wouldn't need a lawyer for a ton of these cases. You just go in and plead it yourself. Yeah. You go in and defend yourself. you just go in and tell your story, and that'd be it. And the jury would listen, and they'd kind of decide. And, I think there's very few people who've ever been through the system who defend the system. Very few people who go through it and come out and go, that thing worked great. Oh, that was a fantastic system. I get great, blah, blah. They might have gotten a result they like, but I just think there's going to be very few people who are going to go through that system and come out the other side and claim that it's a good system. most people are going to tell you is a horrible system and they never want to go back, as opposed to that it was a good system. We don't even have people coming out and telling you that it was okay. For the most part, you go through the system, you learn right away that the system is 100% rigged. Totally rigged. You have no chance. And the last thing you ever want to do is go there. I've told my clients again and again and again, if you find yourself in litigation, you've already lost. You've already lost, man. You've lost. You may or may not get a judgment at the end of the day. Good luck collecting the damn thing. They can drag it out forever, get a million different ways to avoid it, and hide all their damn assets. You're never going to get the court to give a crap about it. You can have a disrespectful lawyer on the other side doing all sorts of stuff. The judges don't do their job. They don't sanction lawyers. They're so hesitant to sanction lawyers because they're elected in most states, and they know the only people who vote for them are the damn other lawyers. So they don't want to come down hard on lawyers. And so the lawyers get away with all sorts of crap. And I've practiced long enough to know that in the beginning, it was just fax machines. They were just kind of used. When I started practicing, you could barely even send notice with a fax. And even then I noticed how really, truly the difference was between dealing with the lawyer face-to-face and dealing with a lawyer on a fax. Well, now everything's email. I mean, the people are just rude as hell. They'll say anything. There's absolutely no professionalism, and the judges don't crack down on it. And all those things add up over time to a system where the lawyers are massively incented to just rip their own clients off endlessly and then blame the courts, which they do. And the courts don't come down and crack down on lawyers for all their bad behavior. And the lawyers raise money for the judges and they get preferential treatment in their courts. And the big firms get massively preferential treatment. It's so crooked from top to bottom that to try to address fixing it requires a lot of education of the population, a lot,
I've heard that if every person that was charged with a crime went to a jury trial, that like 80% of them would be dropped.
Well, the system would collapse overnight. That's the thing. Yeah.
So my question is, if you were to offer any advice to some person that might find themselves in a situation where they're tangled up in the system, what would you advise them to do?
Well, I don't know. I don't know, Patrick, you want to talk about that? What do you want to do?
Well, I just mean, in the past, I've told my clients that the court is like a gorilla. I mean, if the gorilla is going to dance with you, you're going to dance with the gorilla. That's just the way it is. I mean, I guess I would try to advocate for an attorney who, is going to push the case forward as opposed to just sitting on it and letting it go. Another thing I've heard say, and that I tell clients, is that the court is like, it's a giant elephant. I mean, you take a stick and you poke it in the ass real hard and it gets up and it takes a step forward and then it sits down again. Then you got to poke it in the ass again and see how far it goes this time. So that's just kind of, and again, I mean, like, yeah, doing what you can to avoid going into the courts itself. You have some options, but I mean, I've turned down cases before where it's like, well, I mean, what are you going to do? You're going to get a judgment, which is a piece of paper, and that's all it is. And then these people are broke anyways. So, I mean, you could file that piece of paper and have it attached to some real estate, maybe. But even in Wisconsin, your primary residence is protected up to $75,000 in equity. So it just, in some ways, it just doesn't make sense.
Yeah, I would say that those are all, I agree with those points. And it has to do with whether or not you're talking about a civil or a criminal matter too. If you're talking about a criminal matter, well, one, you don't have a choice about that. You get dragged into it. And so now you are a criminal defendant each time. And so if you're a criminal defendant, it's really, really unbelievably dependent upon the DA who's assigned to your case and what kind of relationship you might have with them and what kind of attitude they have. And it has a huge amount to do with the actual district attorney in the county, because they set all sorts of policies that then these assistant district attorneys are supposed to enforce. And all these things are, in my opinion, fantastic violations of the ethics rules that prosecutors are supposedly sworn to do justice. And yet, here they all following these arbitrary rules and some crap that their district attorney wants to do for political reasons. All those are violations. When I was a public defender for 1 year, I was kicked out of 3 courts, and I had to threaten 3 different prosecutors that I was going to file ethics complaints against them because what they were doing was clear violations. They wanted to keep the case going after we had affidavits of non-prosecution. Well, they don't have any evidence anymore. Oh, well, they just want them to take some kind of life skills course and take some bullshit probation. Like, dude, you don't have a case. You have to dismiss this thing. You can't make my client do anything now. And so those are the kinds of insane things you run up against. And if you have a DA, like if you're in a smaller county, like that's pretty responsive to the people, you're going to get a relatively reasonable deal. Now, I'm assuming that you're guilty here, okay? If you're not guilty, then it's a different matter. But most people are technically guilty of the stupid crap they make up and then they charge you with. So, you got to try to decide, you're going to really try to make a big deal out of this. You want to try to get them to reduce it down to a lesser included offense, plead out to the thing, get deferred. There's all sorts of ways you can work the system. If your goal is to so-called make a point, okay, well, good luck to you. Then that's fine. No different than on the civil side. If a person comes into my office and one of the first questions I ask them is, what is it they want? At the end of the day, if we had the trial or we had a settlement, we're shaking hands. What's happened? What you got a check? Is that it? Okay, you got a check for how much money is that we're talking about? You're going to get, and you're going to be happy to walk. And if they tell me anything besides a number, okay, I don't take the case, because if they want justice and fucking satisfaction and all this other crap, you're not going to get it, man. You're going to be so pissed off by the time this system is over, in there frustrated, calling me, bitching at me all the time. Well, this is bullshit, and they can't ask me that. I don't need to do it. I'm not going to put up with that, because I tell them up front, you're not going to get justice through the system. The best you can ever hope for is at the end of the time, there'll be a number written down that may or may not be collectible. And if the people have money on their side, okay, well, maybe they give you a check, and I want to know what that number is, because if that number is not reasonable, then again, I'm not going to take the case, because all that's happening is I'm buying myself a headache that they're going to pay me at the end of the time. They're going to want to grievance me, and they're start blaming me for why they didn't get enough money and all, and they're going to act like I'm doing a shitty job, even though the system is totally unworkable. And so a lot of it has to do with the people and what they want. If their expectations are reasonable, that's fine. When you get caught by the state and the state has claimed that you violated one of these made up things they wrote down, okay, well, that's the system we're in. Okay, dude, that's why I make a show, because this system sucks and I don't want to be in this system. But when you're in the system and you get trapped like that, you have to make an individual decision about, okay, how much trouble am I actually willing to go through? And if you're not willing to actually go through with that thing to the end, then it's not going to work. And so I make sure you got to tell me right now, I'm not going to have you changing your mind 6 months from now, because if we start going down this road, you're not going to have other options, because we're going to piss the other lawyers off. We're going to piss the judge off, blah, blah. You read them the riot act. If they still want to do it, fine. Then fine. Then that's on them. That's their case. But, as Patrick said, it's a crapshoot. See, it's not supposed to be a crapshoot. It's supposed to be a place you go down and get justice. That's what it's supposed to be. And the only reason we even have to have this conversation is because it's so distorted. If it actually worked, instead of running the other way, you'd run towards the courthouse when you had a problem. That's the last place you want to be. It's the last place you want to be, because it's so fantastically corrupt. And so, giving advice to people, you can't give them generalized advice. Obviously, it's completely out of the question. But in the only generalized advice I ever give is the kind of things I just gave, which is that you have to really look into yourself and decide, how much trouble is this worth? Because when you first get served with a lawsuit on the civil side, everybody's so pissed and they're ready to go to bat and spend whatever it takes and blah, blah, blah. Still, they start writing checks for a few months, and now they're not so hot on it. And now they're pissed off at me and they think I should be able to do it cheap. So all these things are the kinds of issues that come into it, and that people are not realistic about the fact that we can't change the system, and you have to decide you're going to operate within this system. That's it. I can't change that. And people have to be honest. And most people are just not willing to be honest about what they really want to do. They just aren't.
Yeah. Yeah. And the thing is, I look around and I see like people like Patrick and just other people I know that are a little bit younger, just got into the field of law. I don't know if it's so much Patrick, so like don't take this personally, man, but there's kind of like an idealized version of what an attorney is supposed to be and what that attorney is supposed to do. And I think you've been through some pretty rough shit in just a couple of years that you've been practicing law, and it's kind of a rude awakening for you, like the things that you had to do to get to the point where you're at, where you open up your own practice. You want to talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, so when I wanted to become a lawyer, I was talking to other people because it's a family career, right? People in my family are in the law, and one of the things that other lawyers I would talk to would say, hey, I want to go to law school, and they'd be like, why? Why do you want to do that? And I was like, oh, all this bullshit that you hear young people say. And now, I mean, I've been out for maybe 4 years now, and I'm turning around being like, yeah, why? Why do you want to be a lawyer? And my kind of negative experiences, the most negative experiences that I've had in those 4 years have been with other lawyers, and particularly lawyers that I worked for. And it really kind of jaded me on the practice in general, and jaded me on just being with other lawyers. I mean, I lost the lottery 2 times in my first 2 jobs, just landing in positions where it's like, I mean, it's clear that lawyers don't give a shit except about themselves. And I think it's like a situation where maybe you have to be that way because you feel like you need to protect yourself and protect this little corner that you've cut out and clawed your way into. But it just seems that the incentives are very self-protective and self-serving. And I've found that attorneys just, in general, have egos, and it's just negative things like that. I don't know, Legal Man, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I've had a horrible experience with lawyers. I've met some decent lawyers, and we usually become kind of collegial. The longer you practice, the more clear it becomes that the structure of the practice that they've created now with this billing nonsense is a huge problem, because it just incentivizes lawyers to drag shit out as opposed to actually do what's right for the client. And some of the work I do, some of the work I most enjoy doing, in fact, is actually just being a advising lawyer to someone who's got a lawyer. Basically, I interact with their lawyer, and I kind of ask the lawyer what they're doing, and kind of then I can tell the client, because I don't have a dog in the fight. I'm just there, just letting them know, and I can it's no different than getting a second opinion from a doctor. You hire a lawyer. Well, you don't know jack shit about the law and how it works or anything else. And everything you do know is completely fucking wrong. I can assure you it doesn't work anything like that. So you need someone else to be like, does this make sense, dude? He says X, Y, and Z. Is that, yeah, that is the way it works. It works like, you might be able to do X, Y, and Z. But yes, there's a lot of jerk lawyers out there because they're highly financially incentivized to be jerks. They sell themselves as tough lawyers. Tough. We're going to be tough. Oh, okay. You don't have to be rude. Hammer. You don't have to be rude to be tough. And, I get along very well with lawyers who are reasonable. I mean, I don't have to agree with their legal position in order to be friendly with them. It's not their case. The reason you have a lawyer in between the clients is because I'm not going to come to fisticuffs with the guy, because it's not my business. My business is just my client's business. That's it. And so these lawyers who take all this crap personally, they stir it all up because they're getting paid. And when they create these giant fights out of nowhere, it's hugely to their benefit. And so it's really screwed the practice up. Just like Patrick, I had a lot of lawyers in my family, and I had a lawyer. My uncle's like 95. He's a very, very prominent lawyer in Atlanta for years, and started a very, very prominent kind of white shoe firm. And I can remember having a conversation with him like almost 35, 40 years ago now. And it was about how much he was discussing the fact that the legal practice had really been destroyed during his life. And that was with the institution of this billable hour. All legal work was done before was based upon results. And a client would come into his office and they would say what he needed and wanted to get done. And he would quote him a price. And if he could write a letter and get that done with a letter, well, then that was all the work he did, because the reason that letter worked is because of who signed that letter. The lawyer got it and knew, well, that came from, and I'm not going to say his name, but it's like, he's a hell of a good lawyer. And, we need to look at this and let's get it resolved. He's being reasonable, because the other guy didn't have an interest in turning the thing into a giant war. And the reason these things have been turned into giant wars is this billable hours and the fact that all the stuff is driven by these very large corporations who have billing departments and legal departments, and they can run you into the ground. And they know that they can do a calculation, and they keep these guys on staff and they just work you into the ground. And again, it's another big problem, and it has trickled down into legal practice. And because all this stuff is done by phone call, fax, email now, you never have to actually get down and face somebody. But the reality is, if you want to get something done, you need to go meet people in person, because it's a totally different type of situation. When you're sitting there talking to somebody, you're not going to be calling them big fat liar and all this other crazy shit they say on phones and faxes and emails. When you're in person, you're not going to. You're going to be more civil, and that's just human nature. And it's the same exact problem that you get with the fact that the courts don't ever resolve anything. Everything's just done by submission. It's just crap. Like in federal court, you can hardly even get a hearing. In fact, you don't even have a right to a hearing. They just get to decide stuff on the written documents. It used to be you went down with your client and the judge, and you met in front of him with the other lawyer, a lawyer you knew you were going to see again. Most of the time, you won't even see the lawyer again in a large city. You may see him twice or three times in your career, maybe, unless you have a very specialized practice. You're never going to run into him again. So they feel free to be as rude as they want to you, make crap up, because the judge is never going to say anything. It's totally basically anonymous. And you go down there, and it's a totally ineffective system. And so, if you just look at the way it's constructed, the incentives are there for horrible narcissists to go to work in the law and just lie to their clients. There's no way in hell to tell whether or not they're lying about what the problem is, and to generate all sorts of absurd work that doesn't actually need to be done. It just doesn't need to be done. And when you're on the other side of that, as a defendant, and you're trying to be a decent lawyer, and the other guy is just being a complete a-hole, just sending all sorts of stuff and constant emails and hassling all this stuff, your bill gets high, it gets really big, and there's really no way to justify it, because it's nothing happening in the case. You've just got a dick on the other side. And it's like, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to write your own time off? Well, you can't. You're supposed to work for free. I'm not going to work for free. I'm not going to take this guy's abuse for free. And so, again, it's just a situation where you're just locked in to the structure of the system being the problem, as opposed to the desire to try to get justice, which is no part of the system.
You brought up billable hours, and one of the things that struck me as you were talking was there's my wife is from South Africa, so she kind of has, she kind of had a stereotypical view of Americans. And I remember one time she talked about lawsuits and the way that Americans like to sue each other. And it's kind of a reputation that Americans have, this culture of suing. How much is that attributed to the costs and ineffectiveness of lawyers?
Are you directing that to me or Patrick?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I'm sorry.
I don't know. I mean, how do we divide up the percentage of problem cost with all these issues, right? It's so difficult,
Do you think there's an irrationality in an over legislation, or I don't even know what you call it, the over people's willingness to sue, is there too much of a willingness to sue in the United States?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear that last part of what?
Are people too willing to sue in the United States? Are they too gung ho to take someone to court?
I don't know. I think there's a lot of misconceptions about the law that probably do create some amount of litigation, because there's a lot of people who, the kind of Jerry Springer audience that, I'll get my lawyer kind of shit. And it's like, you don't have a lawyer, dude. Come on. Who are you kidding? And, but there are a lot of people like that who think that the law is this way to kind of push yourself around because they watch a lot of TV. And so they think that's realistic. But the only reason most of these crappy cases go forward is because there's a lot of crappy lawyers. I mean, you got to be an idiot to take a bad case. I mean, you are buying yourself a headache. The most important decision you make in a case is whether to take it or not. As a lawyer, the last thing you want to do is take a case that sucks. Mm-hmm. Now, sure, you'll take a case that sucks if you can make a lot of money, but they better give you a nice big retainer. But as far as people just being litigious, I don't know how litigious this society is. I would say compared to the amount of scamming that's going on by corporations and abuse that's going on of the people, that the litigation is very, very small. Okay. I would say if I had to weigh the amount of so-called litigation problems, and I had to put it on either the plaintiff side or the defense side, it would be so heavily on the defense side. There's so much more abuse on the defense side, and it gets no press at all. All you hear about is this kind of litigiousness, which is crap, no different than the stupid hot coffee case, which everybody who's looked into it knows was a load of shit. But it's the same kind of thing is what I'm talking about, is that the real problem in the law is massive defense abuse, where they don't give you documents. They don't answer questions in a straight fashion. They try to avoid stuff. They raise endless amounts of horseshit defenses that they have absolutely no basis for. You move to strike the things. The judge doesn't bother striking him. He doesn't sanction the lawyers for raising and wasting all his time. They call the deposition after deposition of people that are a waste of time. The defense causes so much more abuse and cost in our system than the number of so-called phony baloney cases, because most lawyers, you go in and it's not like Jackie Child. You don't burn yourself on tripping on the coffee, going to the movie theater, and you're going to get rich. That's not what's going to happen. Just because it's the Baby Ruth era, you're not going to get anything. The lawyers don't take those cases. They don't take those cases. And I challenge people over and over and over again to bring forward examples of these actual so-called frivolous lawsuits. Where are they all?
I got one.
You go down to the courthouse. You're not going to come across a bunch of frivolous lawsuits unless you want to go to the criminal courts. Then you'll find frivolous lawsuits everywhere. All the bullshit filings they got against people. Yeah, you'll find them every day. But down in civil courts, I don't think so. That's just not the case. Now, frivolous defenses, pretty much any case you pull up will have a huge list of bogus defenses that they've alleged in their answer. A huge list of bogus defenses that you have to wade through, chopping and all this. And there's no penalty for just shotgun bullshit that they do. So
this one will blow your mind, though.
Yeah.
My wife, when she moved here from South Africa, her background is working as a paralegal on foreclosures in South Africa. So when she came here, obviously we turned to the legal field, tried to find her a job. She got a job in Houston at first, and then when we were moving to the area we live in now, the attorney she worked for put out a word for attorneys he knew in this area to call her up. Well, we were on the way. We were literally moving down here, and an attorney called her. And he was a personal injury attorney, and so this was one of the most ridiculous things I've ever heard in my life. And Patrick knows about this story, so that's probably why he's laughing over there. So they got a call from this family whose son had been put in prison or even put in jail, and they couldn't bail him out, or they wouldn't bail him out, or something like that. So he hung himself with the phone cord attached to the phone at the jail.
No, so you sued the phone company?
They sued the
phone line manufacturer or some crap for making it too sturdy. Shouldn't be sturdy enough to hold it.
He
reckless conduct to make it.
And he did. He took the case, suing the company that made the phone.
Okay, and the only reason that case like that is taken, is because you got a lot of potential damages with a really shitty set of liability, and that's a pretty standard kind of analysis lawyers do. It's like, well, no damages, really easy liability, and maybe you take it. Really questionable liability, really big potential damages and deep pockets, and maybe you take it. It's the same kind of thing, but the stuff's all in between. And
right. No, I just thought it was one of the most absurd things I've ever heard in my life.
So this is what I wanted to mention, Legal Man. So I was a personal injury attorney for 2 years almost.
Yeah, I did PI work in Houston for years. Yes.
Oh, you did? Okay. So okay. I was going to say, before you started about the litigious bit, I was going to say it seemed to me that in the 80s with this hot coffee case, there was a real PR campaign by conservatives to paint personal injury plaintiffs' lawyers as being litigious and always bringing these ridiculous claims.
Absolutely.
And so I didn't understand your stance on the McDonald's hot coffee case, because when I went into law school, I mean, you hear about that case all the time. When I thought it was bullshit, right? But then I learned more about it and learned that the lady died. They didn't tell you that part, that she died because she got third-degree burns. And McDonald's was serving the coffee so hot that if it would scald and burn you like to the bone if you touched it.
They've been warned again and again. I did a whole more than a decade ago, when I had a website, and I actually had a short radio show 20 years ago. I did on Stella Lieback's case. There's all sorts of stuff that was crazy. The jury didn't like McDonald's experts, thought they were rude as hell. Yeah. And the other most important part, not only was the damage horrible, she's a little old lady, she's fucking third-degree burns all over her private parts. Yeah. They'd offered to settle for just the medical bills. McDonald's has said, screw you. But even more important, the damages that were this millions and millions, insane, crazy. You know what the calculation was? Most people don't know this. It was the profits from one day's coffee sales for McDonald's. How the hell can you get any more reasonable than that? That is very fucking reasonable calculation. They didn't pull it out of their ass and just dream up some made up number. They're like, look, they burned this lady. They treated her like crap. They ran into this thing. I don't think they should make profit off the coffee that day. That's it. So they tagged them for that. And even then, the judge issued a remitter in that case and knocked it way down to like $700,000. And then the thing settled confidentially. And so that case was a classic example of the way they were abused. Like in Texas, I tell people all the time, when I started practicing, I got licensed in 89. And when I started practicing, I originally went to law school because being a PI lawyer is very profitable, and it's a great business in Texas. And by the time I got out of law school, they were already changing all this stuff. They gutted workers' comp. People cheer that. They're idiots. They're cheering for the fact that your rights as a worker have now been destroyed. Not only did they put you into the monopoly system, but you can't even get a lawyer now. So only the business has a lawyer. And then you're capped. Like, oh, you lost your arm? Oh, it's $50. Well, what do you mean I lost my arm? It's $50. That's what the statute says. You get $50. It's like, okay, I lost my eye. Oh, you get $150. It's like, oh, these are bullshit amounts. They gutted workers' comp. They gutted deceptive trade practice. And then they went to work on personal injury. And in Texas, it was targeted. And in fact, it went from the second best state to be a PI lawyer to the second worst state in the decade of the 90s. And that was all just massive jury manipulation, endless jury manipulation with these lies about these out of control juries and all this shit. They never had any actual examples. When you looked at the examples, it became clear as day that the examples were made up, that there was nothing outrageous about them. And that's been my experience in all sorts of cases with lawyers and juries. They don't just hand money out for no damn reason to somebody. It's true. There are certain areas, even in Texas, like in all of East Texas, the railroad companies went out there, they tore up the train tracks in all sorts of counties because they didn't want people to get venue out there because they knew that the juries didn't like them. Well, that's just like any government system. If you're doing your business, conducting it in a way that the people of the area don't trust you and know your reputation for ripping the people off, abusing them and crippling them and everything else, well, don't be surprised when you go in to try a case if the jurors are none too happy and want to tag you. And so all these things are so distorted, and it's just mind-bending to me that the people fall for it. But of course, the people fall for the mask. They fall for the vax. They fall for the voting. They fall for the Fed's fighting inflation. They fall for anything. And so they've fallen for this idea of frivolous litigation being the biggest problem, when in reality, by far the biggest problem is frivolous defenses. By far the biggest problem in the system is frivolous defenses, not frivolous claims. And and lawyers who are honest and objective and have been lawyers for a length of time know that. They know exactly what's going on. But again, like back to our original points, that they're financially incentivized to keep this system rolling. And so not surprisingly, they keep the system rolling. It's just that simple, really.
Here's a few examples from Wisconsin in personal injury cases. Medical malpractice in Wisconsin, I believe there's a handful of successful medical malpractice cases per year.
Oh, yeah.
And they've changed everything so that the case has to be venued in the county where the plaintiff resides. So wow. If you are from, bumfuck Wisconsin, and you go to Madison to get a procedure done, and the doctor maims you, you have to sue them in your home county, which is bumfuck Wisconsin, where the juries are ultra conservative.
Right.
And they trust doctors.
Right. Right. Well, we had the same kind of thing in Texas. They have caps, of course, on the limits. You have to get affidavits prior to the time of filing that shows all this stuff. Most doctors, they don't want to sign off on that stuff. It's very difficult to get doctors to defend this type of stuff and to go after them as plaintiffs. Very difficult. And on top of that, the laws themselves, just trying to ever get it. A case is almost impossible. Every time they ever do any kind of analysis on it, shows 9 out of 10 times that malpractice is committed. No one even goes to try to bring a case, let alone can successfully bring a case. It's almost impossible. The doctors are basically free to really seriously mess you up. Especially if you're old, because you have a case, you're not worth anything. All the value is in the amount of life and the problem with your life moving forward. If you're old, well, you don't have very many years left. And so if you're even going to get through the litigation process, which they can drag out forever, and appeals and everything else, you're not going to get any satisfaction. And it's very expensive to prove medical malpractice. And again, it's another perfect example of the way the people slit their own throats by standing up for and demanding and defending and protecting and pushing for shit that screws them, because they're so damn dumb and they're so confused. And why anybody would want to protect the defendants from having to step forward and defend themselves when these doctors, they have insurance, that they're all covered with malpractice insurance. All you're doing is giving some gigantic entity like Chubb or whoever might underwrite your medical malpractice a break. That's all you're doing. And the idea that you're somehow going to drive good doctors out, it's so ridiculous. It's so totally ridiculous. I don't know. It's very frustrating to me how distorted the understanding is of the legal system and how truly upside down it is compared to what the reality is. And these kinds of frivolous litigation, lawsuit complaints, they are a prime example of the problem. They are a prime example of the problem, because nobody has ever heard of frivolous defenses, and they are a way bigger problem.
Right. Well, and that just goes back to your original point when Mark Levin is bitching, moaning, and groaning about, jury nullification.
Right.
That's really the people's only defense.
It's the only defense. He's out there.
He's ways.
Bad mouthing it.
Yeah. And the fact that, Reagan's constitutional attorney is like, oh, let's be unconstitutional, is so ironic and just makes me laugh. But we've been going an hour, and I know I told y'all we'd only go an hour, and I know y'all are both busy. So do y'all need to go, or do y'all want to go for a few more minutes, or what do y'all want to do?
I've got a hard break coming up here shortly.
Mm-hmm.
But I've got a few more minutes, but I've got a hard break. But I'm fine with whatever. If Patrick wants to go on, I can run for a few more minutes. If not, I can jump off as well.
What you got, Pat?
Well, I guess just in conclusion, it seems to me like I've always thought of the role of tort litigation, personal injury and products liability and things like that in a free society would be the primary tool of regulating the market. Instead of having these huge giant bureaucracies come up with these arbitrary regulations or things like that, let's just let the plaintiff's bar set, regulate basically all of these products fields and things like that. And again, you use a tool like jury nullification to keep it accountable to the people. I don't know how applicable jury nullification is to the tort system, but because usually it's defending against the state, I guess it is state action that is the cudgel. You're asking the state to punish someone, or at least to make you whole in that context. But again, the tool of using the jury to essentially see what's reasonable and what's not on a hyper local particular level, I think is a great kind of free market solution to the problem that we have of the government regulating these industries.
Yeah, for sure. It's 100 times better than the system we currently have, which is a fully corrupted, people call them these captured agencies. Give me a break. They're set up to be that. That's what they're set up to do. They're set up to provide an official defense for these criminals who operate these businesses in these ways that are, like I said, just the amount of abuse people take on a consumer level. Just think about Microsoft and the stupid garbage with all these forced updates and all this shit that then wrecks your system, and you got to spend hours and hours and hours of your own damn time. Think about the airlines, all the different ways they change this, change that. In the common law, a common carrier had the highest duty to the people that they took in as passengers, the highest duty. Well, just think about the highest duty and then compare it to what happens when you go and try to get on a commercial flight. And the way you are just treated like the lowest cattle scum. And then you just lose your bags and screw you around and miss your flight. And now you don't get there for the conference and you miss the wedding and all this crap. Oh, they'll put you up at the Marriott for the night and you come out tomorrow morning. It's like, dude, that ain't going to do it. That's not going to settle it. Well, the government has written all these defenses for them and caps and everything else. You can't sue the airlines for almost anything they do. People don't know that, but it's a perfect example of the way the agency, so-called, steps in to protect you. And all it really does is protect the defendant. No different than Pfizer, no different than all the medical stuff. It's all these things are the same. And the people are sold the idea that it's there to help them. But the reality is the most help is to go down, just like Patrick said, to your local county jury and tell your story and have the people say, you know what? I had the same damn thing happen to me. It's a scam. Screw them and punish them. There was a very funny, and I'll end on this one, and then you guys can do whatever. But there was a hilarious movie called Mystery Alaska in the late 90s. Burt Reynolds in it. Funny hockey movie. One of my favorite sports movies. A great movie. Anyway, they've got a case, and the equivalent of Walmart is moving into their little tiny town, and they don't want them there, right? And so they're coming to scope the town out. The Walmart employee is coming to scope the town out. They find out about it. He gets accidentally shot as the thing bounces off some stuff, and he gets shot by one of the people. So the guy has to get brought up on charges for the assault, the criminal assault. And it's a classic example. It's my favorite example of jury nullification. And they run the local guy through. They talk about the guy, the the so-called Walmart. He's not Walmart, but they show him and they make the case. The lawyer's hilarious. He has a great line there. He says, "Forgive me, Your Honor, I'm fat." And he's just a very likable lawyer. And at the end, they read the verdict, and the verdict is not guilty. And of course, obviously, he was guilty of technically shooting, and okay, he was, but the jury's not going to convict him because they don't like this guy. They want him out of town. But on top of that, the jury says, and we award the defendant, and they award him amount of money for the trouble. And the judge is like, you can't do that. And the lawyer's like, that's not going to stand.
That's awesome.
But to me, it's just so classic, and that's the way it's supposed to work. You got a small town. They don't want them coming in there. And you know that. And so don't come there and expect to impose these artificial standards on that community. That community sets the standards. And you don't like that, you need to stay out of the community. And that's the way it's supposed to work. We're not supposed to have to come together with 330 million people, 329,999,000 of them who don't like me. I'm not going to get along with them. I'm not going to reach a compromise with them on all these issues. That's idiotic and asinine. You're supposed to be a small compromised area where you kind of live among people you like. And if you don't like those people, you need to go find another area where you get along better. And then the people all kind of get along and they do what they want to do. And that's what Patrick's saying when you're talking about a jury. That's what it looks like in practice.
I think what might be interesting is if we do like a part 2 on this later on, and we talk about the why tort reform was such a bad idea in the 90s. I think I hit a nerve there.
No, it's just so classic. It's just every time tort reform is no different than anything else. It's all misnamed. It's all upside down. It's a 179 club. If they tell you it's tort reform to help you, it's tort reform to screw you. That's exactly. You just know it. Every single time, it's always the same. And so, yeah, I'd be happy to do that.
All right. Well, plug away because I know you got to go, man. I know you got a heart out.
Well, if someone wants to follow me, they can. I'm Legalman at US Law Review on Twitter. I'm there a decent amount. My website is not really up, but you can also listen to my podcast. It's called The Quash. It's also pretty much anywhere. I got a Patreon account that's also The Quash. If they want to go there, I got extra stuff. I do a live show in there as well. But if you like the stuff I say, then like I said, just go listen to my podcast, and you'll probably like my podcast. So thanks for having me.
You'll like his podcast. He's got a great podcast.
Well, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really appreciate that.
It was great fun. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Pleasure to meet you.
Yeah, great meeting you too, man. Take care.
Yeah, well, everyone knows where to find me. Libertarian Institute.
Oh, are you done? I wasn't done with you.
Whoa, okay.
No, I'm just playing. No. If you got to go, we can go.
No, there's a few calls I should make, but I'll do my plugs and then we'll say.
Yeah. We'll cut it.
So libertarianinstitute.org/Patrick and libertyweekly.net. And then I replaced Substack with a site that I actually control that's portable. So that's libertyweekly.club. So it's a newsletter and I run all my benefits through that. And so you get early access to my articles and bonus episodes.
So now I got to find another. See, I had all of your links, and now you add another link, and I got to go find it and put it in the show notes and
libertyweekly.club.
Yeah,
as opposed to.
I'm just gonna tell you to send it to me because
that's okay.
I'm not gonna go look for it. I've been working. I sent you the first part of the article that I started working on.
Yeah, I did see that.
Yeah, I told you I was gonna start it.
You sent me a picture of the screen. It wasn't a screenshot. It was a picture of the screen.
It was a picture of the screen. It was me sitting here drinking a beer, taking a picture of a screen.
Well, that's awesome, dude. I didn't come out with an article last week, and I feel bad.
No, well, I rarely write articles, but, whatever. Yeah. I'm very, very hard on myself when it comes to that. So
you're good, man. You're good.
If I write something, dude, I'll read it out. If I read it out loud and I don't like it, I just trash it. I won't even try to redo it. I will trash it.
Just say fuck it.
I'm just like that. I'm very, very self-conscious when it comes to that.
You need to clean your screen, dude.
I do.
I'm looking at the screenshot.
Yeah, I need to clean it. That's no doubt. It might be a accumulation of all the smoke from smoking in this room.
Yeah. Is this going to be your magnum opus?
That's the beginning of the magnum opus.
Yeah.
This is my nuclear bomb on the new treasurer of the LP.
Oh, right. Yeah. I saw that Twitter exchange.
Yeah. So
yeah.
When I found that out, I was like, I actually have to do what I told Patrick I was going to do and start writing this fucking thing.
Yeah, you do. Dude, I'm so done with Twitter. I wish it didn't exist, and I wish that I wasn't part of it.
Man, really the only great thing about Twitter is like being in contact with like people like you and other people.
Exactly.
That's pretty much it.
I'd miss it.
The rest of it I really fucking despise.
Yeah.
It pisses me off so much because it draws me in.
Yeah.
It gets me all emotional, and I'm like, God, now I gotta fucking do shit.
Yes. You can gamify it to make it work for you, as opposed to, I mean, I don't even want to think about how many hours I've wasted looking at that fucking feed.
Yeah. Shit. All right. So we got our plugs, and we're sitting here just talking shit, and I'm going to stop recording. But we can keep talking shit if you want.
If you're gonna play this game of pick and choose, well, it's a game that was made for you to lose. It doesn't really matter how many times, it's the same old worn out stories, same old lines. They're all pointing dirty fingers in hypocrisy, bragging on their feats of mediocrity again. Never really making any kind of change, but they keep on getting re-elected, and I find that strange. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants out of taking our freedoms. Yeah, I said fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants out of taking our freedoms. What's it gonna take for you to see that we're living in a rigged democracy? People stand in line for the thieves that they've been choosing, paying no attention to the rights they keep on losing. But they all gather in the rallies and they chant their names, on goddamn well that it's all gonna be the same. Just 4 more years of war and taxes, 4 more years of them grinding down their axes. And that's why I say fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. Yeah, fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them. I never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedoms. Cause we don't even need them, we'll never celebrate the tyrants that have taken our freedom. Fuck them, don't feed them, cause we don't even need them, we'll never celebrate the tyrants that have taken